We always think about AI as this tool for building the future, right? But what if we could use it to reclaim the past? Well, today we're jumping into a pretty radical proposal from our source material, the idea of using artificial intelligence to restore the American constitutional order.
To really get our heads around this, we've got to start with a huge question, one that's bugged historians and founders for, well, forever. Why is it that throughout all of history, it seems like every single republic eventually fails?
The source material we're looking at makes a bold claim. It says history isn't just a bunch of random stuff happening. No, when it comes to republics, there's a pattern, a cycle of rise, decay, and then collapse that's almost universal.
I mean, you can see it play out. Look at Rome. It rises on these incredible principles, then it slowly slides into an empire and poof, it collapses. Or Venice starts with principles, centralizes power, and then dissolves. It's like they're all reading from the same predictable script. And that leads to a pretty uncomfortable question, doesn't it? Is the United States just the next actor in this very old play?
So this proposal really puts two pictures side by side. In one corner, you've got the founders' original design, a government with a very short, specific to-do list, limited, written-down powers. And in the other corner, you have what the source calls our current reality, a massive administrative state that's doing all kinds of things you just can't find in the original text.
So why does this drift happen? What's the core problem? The source pins it on something it calls generational amnesia. And it's a pretty simple idea when you think about it. It's the failure of each generation to pass down not just the rules, but the memory of why those rules, those constitutional limits, were put there to begin with. That memory fades, and so does the discipline to follow the plan.
And you know, this isn't some new idea. John Adams was saying something similar way back in the day. He basically argued that the Constitution wasn't just a document, it was a system that totally relied on the people understanding and sharing the philosophy behind it. Without that, he said, the whole thing is, quote, wholly inadequate.
Okay, so this is where things get really wild. The source argues that for the first time in human history, technology might offer a solution that the founders couldn't have even dreamed of, an immortal guardian.
And here it is, the heart of the proposal, an AI constitutional guardian. The best way to think of it is like a perfect, incorruptible umpire. It's got a perfect memory of the rulebook, it has zero personal ambition, and it can't be bribed or pressured. And here is the absolute key. Its only power is negative. It can't write new laws, it can't create policies, it can only look at what the other branches of government do and say, nope, that's out of bounds according to the original text.
Now, this AI wouldn't just be dropped into our system as it is today. No, it would be there to enforce a proposed restored constitution, one with some pretty big changes meant to, as the source puts it, purify the original design. And some of these proposed changes are, wow, they're huge. For one, the list of federal powers in the Constitution, that would be considered the entire list, period. No more implied powers. And funding? The compulsory income tax gets replaced by a national lottery, making federal revenue voluntary. Oh, and to hold any public office, you'd have to pass a serious civics exam on founding principles with a 90% score. So you're probably wondering, how on earth would you actually do all this? It would be a massive, massive shift. The proposal calls this transition period the Great Readjudication. And that's exactly what it is, a complete constitutional reset. The idea is to make this process methodical, not chaotic. It's a four-step plan. First, you activate the AI and it starts reviewing every single federal law. Second, it systematically invalidates anything inconsistent with the restored Constitution. Third, it identifies and confirms the laws and precedents that do align. And finally, states and private entities would naturally step in to fill the roles the federal government no longer holds.
All right, so let's run through a quick lightning round of what this would actually look like. First up on the chopping block, the entire Internal Revenue Code, based on direct taxation.
The AI would review it and invalidate it. Under this restored framework, it's unconstitutional. The result? The IRS as we currently know it gets dismantled.
Okay, next up, the central banking system and our modern concept of fiat money.
The AI would assess the Federal Reserve Act and invalidate it. This would mandate a return to what's called sound money, a system where currency is actually backed by gold and silver.
All right, what about all those administrative agencies, the EPA, the FDA, and so on, that have the power to create regulations?
Well, that rulemaking power? Rulemaking invalidated. The argument is that Congress unconstitutionally delegated its legislative duty. The agencies could still exist, but they could no longer create rules that have the force of law.
I mean, the sheer scale of this whole thing is just staggering. To put it into perspective, because of the strict limits on federal power in this restored Constitution, something like a third of all land in the United States currently held by the federal government would have to be transferred to the states or sold off.
So you have to ask, why? Why propose such a dramatic and disruptive overhaul? Well, it all serves a final, very philosophical vision for what human progress could look like.
And that vision is inspired by this guy, a 19th century French economist named Frédéric Bastiat. He believed human potential was basically boundless, but it was being choked by what he called legal plunder, his term for government overreach through things like taxes and regulations. His whole message was, just get out of the way and try liberty.
In this proposed system, that idea of trying liberty becomes permanent. The AI guardian is there to make sure that cycle of decay never starts again. The theory is, if you can do that, human innovation and capital can finally compound, decade after decade, century after century, without those periodic resets. Progress becomes a durable upward spiral.
And this right here really gets to the core of it. The whole point isn't to try and perfect human beings. It's to create a system that no longer depends on them being perfect. It's about building an immortal guardrail that stops the flaws in human nature from corrupting the entire republic from the inside out.
And so this whole proposal leaves us with one heck of a provocative question. It's this wild idea that connects founding principles with futuristic technology. Could an incorruptible AI truly succeed where every single human system has eventually failed? Could it actually break history's oldest political cycle,